This is the story of an average sort of fellow who lives in a nice average neighborhood in a nice average town. Every night he comes home to his nice average house, and in due time he goes to sleep. But suppose that one morning
it depends on from state to state. In some states, once the state legislature or once a voter initiative has spoken in an area, then the individual cities or counties are not free to contradict that or to override it. They can pass supplemental legislation, but it can't contradict or interfere with that state policy. But there are other states where the counties and cities are given much greater latitude in that. Generally, where that's showing up today, it's not in areas where it's helping us, it's in areas where it's holding us back. In many of the medical use states, there are lots of cities and towns that are trying to use their zoning ordinance to totally preclude the opening of dispensaries or grow operations in their area. Well, if they're allowed to do that totally, I mean, it's one thing to have zoning. Zoning makes sense. If I lived in a residential neighborhood, I wouldn't necessarily want any retail establishment in the middle of my block, whether it's selling marijuana or selling liquor or lots of other things. But those zoning ordinances should not be allowed to totally ban dispensaries from a whole county or a whole city. And unfortunately, in Michigan and to some degree in Colorado and other states, they are beginning to attempt to use those zoning powers to effectively preclude implementation of the medical marijuana laws that have been passed in their state.
Most of the facts are known to the official, but what can they do? Their hands are tied.
Those are being challenged in court right now. We haven't gotten any conclusive answer, and in fact it may well be that some states will allow it and other states will not. But it's going to take a few more months before those issues are resolved in the courts. But generally, in most states, yes, you do have the power locally. For example, if a state has a misdemeanor for marijuana possession, that usually means you can go to jail for up to 30 days, sometimes up to a year. You can be fined $1,000 or something like that. That's the state law. But in most states, there's nothing to preclude a local city or county from passing a city ordinance or a county ordinance that says the only penalty under our ordinance is, say, a $100 fine or a $10 fine. Or frankly, they could pass an ordinance saying there's no local penalty against marijuana.
Wait a minute. You said it didn't make any difference whether people knew or not.
That's right, I did.
But where's he going? He's going to City Hall to report the facts to the city officials.
Then it's up to the local police and the local prosecutor as to which law they apply. What's happened, for example, in Denver, got rid of or passed a local ordinance to decriminalize marijuana years ago, but unfortunately the prosecutor for a long time in Denver continued to use the state law. So there were still lots of people being arrested on minor marijuana offenses, even though they thought they had voted to totally decriminalize it. So it requires some goodwill on the part of the local officials if they're going to implement that local law. But I still think it's a valuable exercise to go through, because in the process of proposing and having a public debate over those issues, lots of people locally who've never focused on this issue, who've never had a reason to really think about it in any detail, in fact become much better informed and come through that process realizing it just does not make sense to treat marijuana smokers like criminals, whether you do it under state law or local law. It's terribly unfair to the smoker, but it's also an enormous waste of valuable law enforcement resources.
Well, they've driven him out of one town, but he may be on his way to your community right now. He may be there already, but you know how to handle him. He can't stand organized groups where people work together. If enough of us work together, we can run him right out of the country.